big names across the Republican Party, including former US President Donald Trump, have spoken at the annual GOP leadership meeting in Las Vegas. The meeting set the tone for what the presidential election could look like in just 2 years' time. While Mr. Trump discussed his hopes of returning to the White House, other GOP members used their time on stage to take pot shots at him. Joining me live is the former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Fellow at the US Studies Centre, Mick Mulvaney. Great to see you once again. First of all, how's that majority looking in the House?
Pretty slim. Hey, Laura, it's good to see you again. Pretty slim. We're at the Republicans right now hold a one-seat majority. There's still about a dozen seats that are left to be decided. But it looks like when those races are finished, the Republican majority will be the narrowest of margins, 5, 6, 7 seats, which interestingly was the same margin that the Democrats had in the last Congress when Nancy Pelosi was the speaker. So the country remains outrageously divided, very, very sort of evenly divided between the two parties, and we'll see that same pattern follow through in the next Congress.
Yeah, it seems like the Republican Party is pretty divided as well. You've still got, I guess, the Trump acolytes, those that are looking to the future with Ron DeSantis, I guess a whole lot in between there. What's going on? What do we take out of this Vegas meeting?
It's a lot of jockeying. You saw a lot of the big names, not all of them, but a lot of the big names were there. Mike Pence was there. Mike Pompeo was there. Nikki Haley was there. Chris Christie was there. He was a name you and I have not talked about very much. The interesting thing, I think, Laura, was to watch which people were sort of indirectly criticizing President Trump. That would be Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. And the folks who were directly criticizing President Trump, that would be Chris Christie. So it was a whole variety of sort of criticism from the very mild, the very indirect, to the very scathing indirect. So it was a good variety of opinions coming out of Las Vegas.
Yeah, so what does it tell us about the next 2 years? The Republican primaries going into the next presidential election. You know, is Trump still the guy most likely to win the Republican primary, but then perhaps go on to not win the presidential election?
Trump is the guy. There's no question about it. Yeah. He is still the likely Republican nominee. No question about that. But he is not the same candidate that he was 2 weeks ago. Right before, when you were here, as a matter of fact, we probably thought he was going to sail to his renomination should he decide to run. But that midterm election was crushing to him, and he has not recovered from it yet. So there's a lot of folks who are thinking about running who would never have run against him if they perceived him to be in a position of strength. He is not there right now. He is dramatically weakened, and that's why you're seeing a lot more people start to single him out for their criticism.
And he hasn't gone to Georgia and camped there just yet, like you suggested he should ahead of that Georgia runoff. If this goes badly for the Republicans, that would further damage him, wouldn't it?
It would. And in fact, he didn't even go to Las Vegas. He was the only one not to actually go to the Las Vegas meeting. He did that virtually. That symposium there is hosted by Miriam Adelson, the wife of Sheldon Adelson, who owns Sands Resorts. And I don't know how she would have taken it that Donald Trump did not take the time to show up personally. So that could be a difficult challenge. No, the president's in rough political waters. There's no question about it. But he is still at the head of the pack. He's just a lot weaker than he was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I found his announcement really interesting. It was long. We expected that. It was quite low energy for Trump as well. And I felt like his pitch hasn't changed. So he's running in 2024, but he still had a 2016 pitch. Is that going to work?
No, it was a boring speech. He read from the teleprompter most of the time. I know when the president is reading the prepared comments, and I know when he's sort of riffing independently. He read almost 95% of that speech.
Wow, that's rare, isn't it, Mick Mulvaney? Does that show he's nervous?
I've only seen him do it twice. He did it for the State of the Union speech, which is the national address from the president to the nation that we do every single year. And he did it for the United Nations General Assembly, which the president does only once a year. Those are the only two other times I've seen him stick to the script like he did the other night. So I don't know if it means Lord, the impression I get is this, is he doesn't know what he wants to be in 2024. Your question is a good one. Will 2016 Donald Trump win in 2024? I don't think so. He has to figure out what he wants to be when he runs for office next time, and he hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I find it really, really interesting indeed that you say he's only read from the teleprompter twice, and last week in Florida was one of those. Now, again, let's get back to this very slim majority in the House, one seat, as you say, at the moment. So, look, Kevin McCarthy solidifying his position within the GOP, Hakeem Jeffries seeking to replace a retiring Pelosi. But I'm interested, because we talked about this a lot in the US, about what the Republicans do with this slim majority. Do they need to be careful? What are the indications so far?
Well, careful. I don't know if that's the right word. Here's what they're going to do. They will do their investigations. They will investigate Hunter Biden, the president's son. They will investigate various members of the cabinet. They may launch investigations into President Biden himself. That's not surprising in this day and age. It's what the Democrats have been doing a good bit of time for the last 2 years. They will also be legislating at the same time, but it will be lower key, smaller sort of deals when it comes to lawmaking because Washington is now divided between the Democrats and the Republicans. It's easier to do big deals when one party is in control, as they have been for the last 2 years. So there will be some deal making, there will be some legislating, but most of the attention, most of the energy, most of the oxygen will go to these investigations, and there'll be plenty to talk about for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it certainly will be. I'm just fascinated by this Trump reading off auto cue. So when you were chief of staff, what would happen? He'd have the auto cue there. Would he go off script straight away? Would he use auto cue as a guideline? How did you keep up with all of that?
The hardest job in Washington, D.C., Laura, was the young man who ran the teleprompter, because what he had to figure out is, okay, the president has now left the script. Where is he going to come back? Because he would always come back, but he would never come back at the point that he left. You have to sort of listen. He spent about 75% of his time at an ordinary speech off of the teleprompter, and about 25% on. That changed in the speech at Mar-a-Lago, and it was really, he's not the same when he reads off the teleprompter as he is when he's sort of extemporizing.
Yep, that poor teleprompter guy. Mick Mulvaney, thanks so much for that. We'll see you soon.